Hey, Alex.
Yes.
I think we're right on time, Alex.
I think we are.
I see a lot of folks who joined us. Maybe they're about to join. I see about, 19 of us. And we are another about 7 or 8 in the room. So close to 25. You think we should wait, Alex, or do you think we should get started?
I think that we can get started. I think there's plenty to cover here today. So yeah, let's get started and people will join as they can.
Good enough. So let me introduce our guest speaker today, Anand Rao. And Anand has been kind of been helping us on the soft skills training part, and we requested him to help us on the specifically communication front today. And thanks a lot, Anand, for making this happen and joining us here today.
Thank you. Thank you for calling me.
So Anand, as you know, right, we spoke about it earlier before. We said that in our organization, for multiple reasons, communication has become a challenge for some people at a personal level, at the team level, at the organization level.
Mm-hmm.
And we as an organization, we feel that communication is extremely important for the success of the organization, right?
Okay.
What do you think, Anand? Do you think that we are overemphasizing communication? Or do you also feel that, yes, this is one thing that at a personal level, at the organizational level, we have to get it right?
Right. So I've over the last maybe decade, I've watched the industries grow, both the call center and the ITES kind of industries. And I've only seen that this, the noise around communication skills has increased. People who had, quote unquote, not very great communication skills have grown into roles which are now global. So,
okay,
right. So once they've gone into global roles, they have suddenly come across certain issues that had been raised possibly before, but weren't addressed. So it's quite possible to not work on it and still, quote unquote, succeed. However, there will come a time when you come across certain critical challenges in business. And that's when a lot of people are actually addressing it. So I think it does need to be addressed. How early or how, where within that timeline you choose to address it is an organizational call, but it does need to be juxtaposition with the need as to why, right? But certainly, even from a layman's perspective, we all kind of collectively will say, yeah, communications is a good thing to have. But I would want it kind of qualified,
See, there was an interesting thing you said, right, Anand? You said that people have succeeded, grown up the career path,
Yes.
even without having a perfect or close to perfect communication skills, right?
Yeah.
How do you see that impacting the business on the other side? Is it just that, hey, there was one conversation with the client in a meeting that changes things, or is it series of things that happens because of which people soon realize that, hey, this is a small drawback we have and we need to kind of overcome it?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you've already put it up on the board, which is that, and I'll kind of structure that. So when people talk about communication skills, I refer to a three-layered approach to this, and it is a kind of a three-layered thing that we're talking about. So at the top, people look at the mechanics of language, which is English. You know, the grammar, the pronunciation. Is he speaking correctly? Is he not speaking correctly? However, there is, that's just the mechanics or the medium of communication. If you take it one layer deeper, it's the soft skills. And then if you go one layer deeper, it's our individual beliefs and values that we have. Now, we express through this language. So when somebody says there is a challenge now in business, we really need to look at it and dissect it a little to say, is it just the mechanics of language that he mispronounced certain words, or that his grammar was incorrect, or is it also to do with expression? And what is it that didn't get expressed? So the soft skills part are blended in. So you will express your soft skills through this language, and when that falls short, that's when people start noticing.
So you think that soft skills and communications, they go hand in hand?
Yes, they're almost totally intertwined. Now, if the world was speaking in Hindi, there are a lot of people who would then be able to communicate their ideas and thoughts through, about work, about business through that language, right?
Yep.
So if everyone is
you
speaking
have to
Hindi,
express
yeah,
yourself.
It's just the medium of communication. But you might also find that people in the Hindi belt in India aren't very articulate and expressive or accurate in the way they're expressing in that language, right? So there are levels here, right? So even when we're saying this, it's really about expression, how we end up expressing ourselves. And it's just a medium of communication.
I know it's a little bit down, but I wanted to let you know that our organization is spread across 3 countries primarily, right? So almost, I would say, 50 to 60% of us are based out of India, and about 10 to 15 in United States, and about 5% in Philippines.
Okay.
Right? Do you think that having these geographical across the time zones, their own language barriers, does it become a huge problem for organizations?
I wouldn't say huge. Again, I would need to qualify what huge actually is, or ask you what
actually
yes,
means.
Yeah, calibrate with you on what huge actually means. I think people want to understand each other at some level. They do, especially if they're in an organization. Yes, these language barriers, if they're not highlighted or you're not aware, I won't say highlighted, aware. If you're not aware that this could be an issue, then you'll find that you're expressing from your cultural standpoint, and the other person on the other side, while speaking in the same common medium of communication, which is English, isn't getting it, isn't getting the message. So we express through our cultural background, and hence, so unless there's a conscious effort to really try to understand why another person wouldn't get a particular directive, a particular set of instructions, then it does become a challenge.
Misunderstanding, right? That's what it always boils down to. Whenever we say we have communication challenges.
Yes.
And you said, right, hey, pretty much you are expressing yourself in the language.
Yes.
And if you express it incorrectly, right, now people will misunderstand what you are trying to say.
Yes.
As an organization, we're always trying to address it. What are some simple things that we can think through? Are there any tips? I know that improving communication is a longer journey, right? But are there some things that people can be a little cautious about? Should they slow down? Should they think before they speak? some simple things that you think can help them improve the communication side of it?
Yeah. So for effectiveness, while what you referred to is the mechanics of language. So if you look at the three-layered cake here,
Yep.
there's the mechanics of language, which you quite rightly said will take a little while. But the call out on the soft skills part of trying to understand each other is because we're human. We will understand each other at a human level.
Yep.
That needs to be called out because it has a higher impact on the communication. Because the moment you incorporate something like, everyone says this on call. So I've said this, has everybody understood?
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Now, if behind that, it is a genuine interest to want to understand. So it's a context, right? I really do want to understand Mahesh in India and Alex in, the US. I want to understand what's going on. There's an intentionality to it. And then you incorporate the language, these are simple fixes of, do we understand each other? And I think a standard phrase that I've always heard on meetings, are we all on the same page? Everyone goes, yes, everybody's on the same page. I don't know that.
Who will say they're not?
Who will say they're not, right? And that's a soft skills issue. So some of these things can become routine, but when there's intentionality of wanting to understand the other person, then it's possible to keep checks and balances in the manner in which you conduct yourself on a call or in a meeting, or even on an email, to confirm understanding. Yeah. And that comes from the soft skills side. So I believe that very simple fixes is to check for understanding.
And be a little intentional. Be aware of things.
And then it's a very simple fix. You before starting a meeting, everybody dives in because everyone's busy. People just dive in to meetings. There's always something called an agenda to a meeting. You take a deep breath and you take a minute for yourself to think about what the meeting's about and what you're going to contribute to that meeting, if anything, right? So that helps to kind of gather your thoughts as you begin a situation. And it's really being about being present mentally to that situation.
And one more thing I always tell my team members is communication is not that easy to learn. To improve your skill at the communication level, it takes a lot of time. I tell them that learning technical pieces, we are primarily engineering shop, learning technical pieces is easy. But improving your communication skills takes a little bit more time. Is that true? Or do you think that, hey, anybody can improve communications within a short period of time? When I say period, I'm talking about weeks and months, not years.
So leading question to a communication skills person. I'll kill my career if I told you that. No, I really don't. However, truth. So what I do is I break it down. I say that language and that communication, the hard skills, can be learned and practiced and mastered within a shorter period of time if you define the context. So for instance, if there's an engineer and what his 8-hour job or 10-hour job that he does is within a certain context of, dealing with servers and people on the other side of the world dealing with servers. If you actually sat down and listened to them for over a week, you'll find that it's finite, the language that they use.
Agreed. The terms, the terminology, the situations that come, it's not too varied.
Too varied, right? And now if I add intentionality and I add soft skills, which are, again, contextualized, then I have a program that is deliverable and a target for the engineer to achieve within a finite time, right? As opposed to, you need to improve your communication skills. That's like humongous, right? He thinks, I got to talk socially, I got to talk professionally. These are very vague terms. So I try not to do that because that has become tough for people to get to grips with, and courses and other kind of learning then becomes very difficult. Whereas in this finite space, you'll find that the verbs, adjectives, structures, and even and by the way, I'm not saying they have to become robotic. You'll give them enough options to create new language within that within that finite kind of space.
Something they're comfortable with, something they can exercise.
Yes.
And feel, and again, communicate from their perspective
Right.
to the other side. So one of the things I always thought, Anand, was vocabulary.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times I tell my team members, hey, whenever you think that you have challenges from the communication perspective, try to build the vocabulary that will help you with the communication. Is that a right advice, Anand, or?
Yes, because I get this frequently. The saying that I was giving, this is with the director from a large audit firm. He said, I was halfway through a presentation and I suddenly forgot what to say because I didn't have words. So I said, hang on, you didn't have words, meaning, and by the way, coming from an audit firm, being at a director level, you can imagine that they have enough text, which has enough words in it. But when he was speaking, he suddenly lost track of what he was saying and what word to use to express a thought. So vocabulary, again, it's not just, let's say, verbs. It's like verbs, nouns, adjectives, and that particular set of language, right? And it's essential, in fact, But that to have that on instant recall is what people do, right? So socializing it in a very casual kind of way as you're speaking.
Yes.
To say, did you learn a word? To just share a word. Because people don't really know the meaning. I always say this. I have as a thing, the way we emphasize the word have and the way maybe, a native speaker might emphasize the word have is different. Our sense and feeling for words is different. It's learned through classroom teaching, and we don't really know or have a feel for it. Now, the moment you switch to a native language, right, like Telugu or Hindi, you'll see that they express themselves differently because they have a feeling for the word. So yes, vocabulary is critical, but to do it in a very casual kind of way and socialize it, so that it's not just a set of words that you put onto a table, but you actually know what you're using. That would help.
And you agree that building a vocabulary also takes a little bit of effort and time.
I find that some people get it really quickly. You could play a game of 30 words, and I can assure you that all the people in the room will memorize the 30
words
within the week if you set a target, right? However, will they be comfortable to socialize that and use it in their language? That is a question to be asked. So I can get people to memorize stuff.
So how do we make it happen? Any tips for them?
So you remember that context in the thing?
Yes.
Work that you do?
So you have a boundary and you try to use the vocabulary you're thinking inside the boundary. That's a priority.
Yes.
We had a concept called high frequency words, right?
Yes, high frequency words.
So the idea is to focus on the high frequency word.
Absolutely.
Get a master of that and then venture out.
Right. And the one thing that you've alluded to, if you hadn't realized, is taking the risk. Being willing to take the risk to use it, right? So what happens, people say, I don't know that word. Actually, I know it.
But I've never used it before.
But I don't want to use it in front of all these people.
We're not so sure. Yeah. How will it pan out?
And that's the fear that we were talking about in terms of why we have that fear of feeling foolish or making a mistake. The moment the person is willing to make that mistake, and he's not going to, because we're there to support them, and he sees it once, twice, that nobody flinched if you said some, out
of context,
a word that he would normally not say, right? And then suddenly he recognizes that, I can use it as common language, which is his own common language.
And I know that we spoke about fear before we started the conversation, right? Oh, looks like Alex has a question here.
Yep.
Yeah, no, this is a fantastic conversation, Vikram and Anand. And so I just wanted to poll everybody that's on here today about how easy or difficult they actually find it to communicate. So I'm going to launch a poll here. I just kind of want to see how people are feeling about, talking about the vocabulary and everything else. I'm just curious to see how people are feeling.
You'll have to be dialed in. I don't think, at least in the room, people haven't, but Alex, we should at least get something from others. Let me see if I can submit mine. Say what I feel. It's changing every second. We see, so Anand likes the live polls.
Yeah.
Well, I do like too that people are actually admitting that some things are difficult too, because it isn't always easy, as you said, to communicate. So
Yeah, on the flip side, Alex, I think I see at least 15% actually saying extremely easy, which is quite impressive as well.
One of them was me.
Ah,
You biased the poll.
Nobody knew till now. Oh, shoot, I shouldn't have said that.
all right,
74 responses.
Good.
all right, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Suman, please watch out for the hands being raised, because if I'm talking to Anand, sometimes I won't look at the screen. So the fear factor, Anand, that we talked about, right? That was the conversation we were having before everyone else joined us.
Mhm.
Can we go back to that? See how fear impacts effective communication?
Yeah. So again, fear is generated over a period of time. It doesn't happen suddenly, right? We all have some fears associated with all kinds of things we interact with. In India, what I've begun seeing, and I've heard from so many people, from housewives to students to senior people, they say, I don't want to make a mistake. You know, I am a little hesitant or scared to speak in English, right? And in fact, again, there are some senior people that I've been training recently, so all of this is fresh in my mind. He says there was a presentation, and there was a guy an Indian person who was presenting, and he spoke really well.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was his turn. So he just completely blanked out because he's very good at what he does, and he's a SAP consultant. So he stood up, and all he did was he just went straight to the PPT and just literally just read out the entire PPT in a straight, because he didn't want to feel foolish in front of the wonderful presentation that this other guy gave, which was very wonderful in extempore, and he was speaking really well. So I asked him, so what's the fear? He says, I don't know. I said, I just don't like feeling foolish. So I tend to get people to regress in time, to go back in time, to say, when was the first time you felt foolish speaking in English? And you'd be surprised. You could document some of this. You could create a book around this. It comes from schools. It comes from college. It comes from, one of these consultants said to me, I have actually never spoken in English before I reached this company 10 years ago. He's an grown adult consultant. And I said he's been doing SAP consultancy for the longest time, and then reached this company and started speaking in English. And that's way after college. So he says, so what he says now and how he communicates is just some sort of mishmash of succeeding. But the fear is incredible because it comes from somewhere way back.
The past experiences.
And it's not a recent thing. It tends to be, college or pre-college.
Usually in education setting.
In an education setting, maybe they started speaking when they were in the 6th or the 8th, or even after they passed out of school. So when they got launched into the outside world of, well, you all need to speak English and speak it well and communicate well now that you're here. But how come you haven't worked on it? So we have a lot of cultural, and I'm talking predominantly about how it is in India. So there is an expectation that suddenly you're going to miraculously have gone to a classroom setting and, dealt with the fear. While they master the language or just the mechanics of it, they've not dealt with the fear. So then it just it has a huge impact.
Fear is difficult to master, right?
Yes.
Come across.
Yes.
So again, what are some simple things that folks can do? Because usually when you are young, right, you take a lot of risks. That means you have less fear. As you grow older, you become more mature. You take less risks. That means you have more fear. Does that play into the communication side of the story also? Do you think that the younger folks will actually take risks, be fearless, and communicate better? versus the older folks? Do you think that age plays a factor there?
Yeah, so from a psychology-ish, not that I'm a psychologist, but from a psychology perspective, when that incident, the significant experience, emotional experience happens, that person may choose, I'm never going to do this again, versus I'm going to try it again. Now, there are personalities, right? You have to deal with the idea that everybody is different, unique in their own way, and coming from a different set of can-dos and can't-dos. So now when we look at that person in the workplace, again, we're not going to take everybody into coaching and then try and deal with all those fears, right?
Yep.
So we need a pragmatic and practical approach to making them present to the fact that they're not 5 years old, they're not 15, or whenever that happened.
Yep.
So in a session, what we do is we trigger that response to say, can you get present to the fact that this is a safe environment? Encourage people not to continue as a group doing what we always do, which is that, he doesn't know how to speak English, right? That's the second piece in it. So as a cultural, as a work culture, I would say when you encourage people to make the mistakes in the safe space, you've started to deal with the fear, right? And you will find that when the organization from the top down works on it in that same way, to just message that, it's safe, make mistakes. We're here to make this work. Then they might feel, you'll find percentage that feels encouraged to start. Now, within this, it's not like in a training program, everyone will do it at the same time.
Yep.
They'll all come out of their fears in their own way, but at least you've created an environment in which they're willing to, number one, take the risk and prove to the adult self that it's okay. I'm not 5 years old. No one's going to beat me now for not speaking properly, or no one's going to laugh at me. Let me put it that way.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Anand, we went through the. Yep.
Vikram, I think we have someone in the audience that raised their
Harsh.
hand. Let's see. Harsh.
Harsh.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And Vikram, wonderful session, first of all, by the way, thank you for having the session. A quick question, I think in terms of leaders, what can leaders do to enable beyond the safe space? I think you talked about pragmatic, practical approaches. I think it's important for us as leaders to create that opportunity for the employees to be in that moment of being present, us creating those opportunities so they can overcome that fear as well. What do you suggest? What some recommendations might be for those pragmatic opportunities?
Okay. At the risk of sticking my neck out really far and getting beaten, but I will say what it is. I usually just say it the way it is. When leaders actually present a face of being willing to make mistakes themselves, if they are able to demonstrate a certain, what is the word?
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability, yes. Perfect, thank you. Vocab. So vulnerability, and they are therefore taking on the responsibility of creating that safe environment and again, I'm contextualizing it or scoping it to say not safe environment generally, but very consciously we're creating a safe environment for English, right? Or speaking English. So then it becomes present that we're all in this together and that we're going to do this. And sure, the leaders are leading by example, and you'll find that you will find leaders at every level, coming up in this particular space. Not just leaders as in, leaders above, but people who are willing to take it up. And that's what creates that groundswell amongst everybody to say that, well, they're not just doing this because I'm terrible at English. They're doing this because it's going to be good for everyone, and it will happen. Yeah.
Good.
Does that make sense, Harsh?
It absolutely does. Thank you very, very much. Now, that's an excellent example, and I think thank you for sharing.
Anand, got a question around the fear factor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cases where you get judged for probably the language you speak, and it may not be your strength.
Yes.
How do we address that?
From your own self?
Yeah, and the other side as well.
So we discussed this, and I'm taking going back to a little bit of a funda that I have. So after speaking to a lot of people from various places, I'm beginning to see that there's a bit of a colonial hang-up that we have. And that odd messaging in our country is one of, if you don't speak English, and by the way, nobody consciously ever said this. You know, it's seeped into our behavior and our overall demeanor, right? So my attitude tends to be, you need to call it out, you need to make it present, and you need to be able to say that. Now, there are two sides to this. One is somebody is judging you,
Right.
and then you, of course, are judging yourself because they're judging you. Now, you can rarely do things about what other people can do, but you can definitely do something about your own feeling of judgment, you know? And one of those things is creating a bit of a conscious effort or a willingness to just say, I will make the mistake once, twice, thrice. I will feel judged, but maybe I can talk to Vikram about it. Do I have the freedom to approach Vikram on this, or anybody in your own personal life, right? To say, I'm feeling judged. Now, that's the transition, right? The more you stand up and be willing to take that hit, you'll find that the transformation is in the conversation of fear, you know, that it's not, as in fears aren't necessarily rational, right? So we can't have a rational conversation around fear. You know, it's like counter to the funda of fear being what it is. So the only thing to do in fear is for you to take experience from what you are willing to do, right? And sure, you can put guidelines in an organization around how you could judge, but I think what is more sustainable, but people don't like rules in the first place, they will break the rules, right, when you're not looking. So in addition to the rules, it's really creating a culture to want to be willing to contribute to you, right?
And giving the space.
Yeah, and giving the space. So if I and I intentionally contribute, right? Because that's the only thing that kind of makes me.
So this is what sometimes, you know, especially the people who are coming up, right?
Yes.
Maybe a stumbling block. You know? They don't speak out there.
Yes.
So they feel I'm being judged. Or,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
so they tend to not to speak.
Yeah.
So this is something that requires, you know, addressing.
Correct. And you're absolutely right. It comes from both sides, right? One from the individual and two from the other side to create a safe environment, you know, to want to be able to make those mistakes. You know?
Yeah, and articulate, right?
Yeah.
So it's fine if you are picking up the language, you know, learning the soft skills. Right?
Yes.
But give that space.
Give that space.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks a lot, Hand. And thanks, Shreya, for that conversation. I think we have one more question from the audience. Ajay.
Yeah. Hi, Vikram. So we have spoken about fear, right? So I just wanted to share my experience, you know, how I felt in my college days and how I improved my communication. So initially, you know, even I was also not confident and I was very, you know, underconfident. So I myself taken the initiative to uh, pick up one of the friends and started speaking in English to just to improve. And you know, people were judgmental because, you know, yeah, obviously I also faced backlashes, but I just kept on motivating myself and had a zeal to, you know, improve myself. And you know, that's the story I wanted to share because ultimately, and also it's a learning journey. So it's been 7 years. I started practicing English in 2014, and still I'm in the learning journey. So yeah, it takes a time, and just wanted to share the story and my experiences to all the team members. Yeah, even now I'm somewhat better at English, even there is long way to go. So yeah, so I think if this is useful, obviously I think people will get motivated and inspired.
Oh, definitely, Ajay. Yeah. Thanks a lot for sharing. And that's exactly what Anand was saying, right? We have to have that culture where we can.
I was just going to quickly say to Ajay that you know, you mentioned this word zeal. When
Yes.
you deconstruct zeal, it's interesting that we could go into the psychology of it, but without that, you would be one of those people that I would expect would be able to kind of communicate the zeal part, like how
Okay.
do you know, to
Yeah,
somebody in the organization, right?
yeah, I think the zeal I word used because I had the hunger to succeed and
Yeah.
to win. So the reason for learning English was, I used to see television, and I used to get, like, I want to give a example, like, our captain MS Dhoni. Like, Dhoni used to give press conferences, and whenever he used to win matches, he used to speak
Yeah.
in English. So that was my motivation. When he can speak, why can't I? So it all starts from there, at high level, how leaders or how people who have achieved are successful. They set the benchmark, or they motivate the people or students, and that's where you start your journey. So that's where my zeal came across, and this, yeah, continuous learning. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Ajay. Thanks a lot for sharing that. The next one I had on my list of things here was talk about what happened with pandemic, right? So when we had the 2 years of pandemic, hopefully it's behind us now. Remote work became a norm, right? And yes, in the past also teams were spread globally.
Yeah.
But now even locally, right? You are not in the same place. There is no physical proximity. Communication happens through either phones, the Teams, Zoom. There are so many communication channels around, right? Do you think that communication gets lost in these modern channels?
Yeah, yes. I coach people on, as I'm a life coach, so I coach people on various things that they come to me with. There's a sense of isolation that happens when you're working from home. While people went and started working from home and now work from home because it's convenient or comfortable, they may not recognize that they're slowly, going into a sense of isolation. And yes, when you're on your own and you're doing this, we all have a need to communicate and to, speak to each other, right? But as we start getting busier and busier in our work, we don't notice that we're not communicating. And I mean, just picking up the phone and talking to each other.
Yep.
It doesn't have to always be work, right? In fact, I would encourage people, because it has an effect, right? If you're more casual and relaxed and you're willing to engage with other people and socialize, you will find that it also impacts your work positively, right? To connect. But that's something that is a somewhat difficult topic to deal with, about how do you, in a distributed environment like this now, how do you get people to consciously pick up the phone or coming to work, and you could design programs around that, or structures around that, but I find that it is something that needs a little more attention as to why people don't actually want to do it. It's not just character. It's not just a person, that they're isolationist in themselves, or individual contributors and don't like interacting. I find that people do ultimately feel much more happy when they're engaging with other people. So I would take it to a different level. So to encourage that kind of communication, it's a sense of belonging that needs to start coming in, across.
But do you think it will transcend these communication channel barriers, right? For example, I'm here in Hyderabad office. We go out for a tea break, right?
Sure.
The conversations we have are a little different. If I'm on a Teams meeting, those things never pop up. So what I see is that the communication channel makes a huge difference in how formal and informal the communication are, at least from the work perspective. Would you agree with that, Anand?
Yeah, yes. There have been so many studies about your environment, about how an environment is designed. And obviously this digital communication channel is, so let's rewind a little. The person in any case was a little hampered or held back.
Good enough.
Wasn't exactly communicative at the best of times.
Yes.
Now we brought this thing in called the internet and work from home. And so he goes, brilliant. I don't need to deal with anybody. I don't need to do this social thing. It was tough for me in the first place.
Especially the introverts, right? Introverts were happy.
They were happy, Is it brilliant? Don't need to look at another person, right? Turn my camera off even during a meeting. I don't need to do that.
Actually, I was about to ask you, will forcing to turn the camera on improve the communication? Was another
No, not necessarily. No, not necessarily. Not in a meeting.
Got it.
Because that's already a loaded situation, right? I keep coming back to this thing of the culture, to incorporate a culture, right? And it is a top-down thing, right? Which is that it starts with leadership, because especially in our country where we look up to our seniors and we take lead from our seniors in that. So that culture of communication and how that works would start from the top in terms of whatever that looks like, and each organization will design it differently, and encourage it differently. When people see leaders communicating amongst themselves easily and comfortably, and also with their second line and then the third line, then you'll see that new recruits are dropped into a culture in which there is already communication.
And they pick it up.
So a rapidly growing organization like yourself, interesting challenges.
Preserving culture has
Yes.
become a tough challenge. Completely agree with that.
Yes.
Anand.
Yeah.
Anand, from our organization perspective, right, more caters to us business. A common concern some of my clients will have is that, hey, there is work being done, but your team does not communicate what has been done. I'll give you an example, right? There's a ticket or work item open. The team will work on it, but the only way my client will see is if somebody updates the ticket, right? That's yet another medium of communication.
Correct.
How can I encourage my team to understand that it's extremely important that we communicate, even if it's not a verbal communication? This communication channel is different. How do you think I can encourage them to understand it's extremely important for us to do that communication?
So saying it won't work.
Yes,
meaning
yes, we have tried that.
I'm sure, and I'm sure you've tried many other things in the last year or so as you're growing. So you really do need to design a bit of a program to ensure that it gets kickstarted. Now, the initial push would be a little harder, right? To ensure that, and the noise around that is important, right? That the tickets need to be updated, right? But more importantly, it's not just, and again, I come back to the soft skills of, I usually ask the question, so why didn't you update the ticket? What happened? Now, sometimes when a manager asks, why didn't you update the ticket? He says, why the hell didn't you update the ticket? What's wrong with you? So obviously the guy goes back into his shell. I'm asking the question genuinely, like, so why didn't you update the ticket? I've had an answer, and again, you know that I train one of your guys who is on a PIP, and it's just amazing. He's paid me money, and he's not come for a single session, right? So I ask him, what happened? Why aren't you communicating with me? Now, I'm not even Genzeon. I'm outside, and he's not communicating. Only when he's really sad, and he's depressed, he'll pick up the phone and say, Sir, this happened, that happened, this happened, and he wants to talk to me. Now, I haven't done a face-to-face with him. I always insist on a face-to-face to ensure that the human connect is there, so that he knows who I am and that I'm not an angry person, and that I will create a safe environment for him, and there is trust. So I start with, I can't give instructions on top of lack of trust. I need to build trust. Now, you'll ask the question, how do I build trust?
Actually, that was my next one, because I see that lack of trust and communication, they go hand in hand a lot of times. You don't trust someone, you stop communicating.
Absolutely. I'm the same. I stop communicating with people who I don't trust, right? So when finance doesn't clear my bill, I don't trust this. So I go after them hammer and tongs with emails saying, where's my money? Right? Now, coming back. So how do I build trust in an organization where, it's all like, so how do we start? It's not like trust doesn't exist. It exists. You're already there. We all have the ability to create trust.
Yep.
It's necessary to encourage a conscious effort to build trust with your colleagues. You actually don't need a training program to understand, how do I build trust with somebody? If I were to ask anybody, how do you build trust?
Oh, there is that falling exercise, right? You fall and you're supposed to catch.
Yes. And those are all training exercises. And don't mind me, I'm like not your traditional trainer. I call that pizza training. Meaning everyone goes, has pizza, they love it, they come back. I ask them, what happened? Ah, they gave us pizza. It was nice. Or they did this wonderful thing, you fall back and all that. I fell down on the floor because the guy didn't catch me.
Oh, God.
Right? Stuff like that. But if I say, what was the learning and how did you apply it? So I would say that a pragmatic approach is on a daily basis, you're interacting. There are n number of opportunities in a day to create trust between people. Now, to initiate that, you need a little bit of a program to say, so how are you going to initiate trust starting tomorrow? So the people who are here on the session,
Yep.
right? And we could take that as a simple example that, and I'm saying that I'm not going to give that the training concepts or anything like that. I'm just going to say that I believe that everyone here on call understands what trust is, has experienced trust themselves and a lack of trust. You're now aware that you trust people or don't trust people. And I'm saying this, that tomorrow we'll do that, go off and just do a noticing. Not, you don't have to do anything per se,
Just observe.
Just observe how many people you trust and be very honest with yourself about how many people you trust and how many people you don't.
That also means you have to trust yourself.
Yes, most critical. Trust yourself to be able to, when we complete the sentence, trust yourself to be able to trust someone else, right? So you will notice that it's not that tough, but there are some barriers to it, right? That we've put up. So when we say safe environment, work safe environment, that's what we really are kind of coming around to. When it's a top down, that we're willing to show that work environment, which is a safe environment, people will hesitantly start expressing themselves or hesitantly trying. Now, as a conscious effort, you ask people, right? This is what you got to do. You got to do this. But we don't expect miraculous results in day 1, day 2, day 3. But we definitely do say, start noticing. And look at when are you willing to and when are you not willing to trust. And those results would be very indicative of what's actually happening for yourself.
Do you do therapy sessions also, Anand?
Yes, I do. I do. I do a lot of, no, I won't call it therapy. I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of listening. And I try to make it simple for them. So while we've heard everything, right? And that somebody I don't like that guy. There's what they call the story, the entire thing. Then I say, okay, so what would you like to do about it? So if you want to build trust, if somebody comes to me and say, I don't trust that guy. Cool, you don't trust him. Got it. Understood. What do you not like about him? Everything mapped out on whiteboard. Okay. So you empty your brain, right? You put it all on the whiteboard and you can see it then. That's you with all the little post-it notes of what you don't like about him. I said, right. Despite that, tomorrow when you come to work, are you willing to extend a hand of trust? To trust someone? And what would it do for you? So, you have to have some sort of a reward, internal reward, to want to trust. So people will do it hesitantly. There's a mechanics to all of that, but it's important that people first recognize that it's not about somebody else, it's also about us. Yeah.
That's hard.
It is.
And that's where it leads to personalities also, right?
Yeah.
Even though we talk about communication as an issue, lots of time I have seen that different people have different personalities.
Yes.
Right? And getting always along well isn't practical, right? So those personality clashes also cause communication barriers, and trust kind of works here.
Correct.
How do you think that we can keep the personalities aside, at least in a professional environment, and still work together?
Right. The common agenda. Why are we here? As in,
good enough.
It's just common. I mean, being very practical about it. You're Genzeon, you've employed people, but you have a statement of purpose.
Our vision.
A vision, purpose. And of course, without too much gyan on the top, as in, wow, we're wonderful, But I'm saying So the message comes down further that we are here because we get paid and we're here for 8 hours a day and we are going to spend that time. And we do need to. So when that gets put on the table, that we do need to work together to get a thing done, right? Setting aside your personality, a tough call.
Understood. You can't separate it.
Yeah.
That's the reason who you are.
Yeah. But to have to agree, to not have to agree, to be willing and to be willing to agree on that agenda.
The common agenda.
The common agenda is of critical importance, and to get everybody's say on it, to get their vote, to say, yeah, I'm here for this. And of course, everyone is not going to, they may turn around and tell you, it'll be in their body language, right? They say, yes, Vikram, of course. And it's not going to happen, right? It may not happen. And again, all the degrees, right? It may happen, it may not happen. And management is ready for it. So as management, we're willing to contain all these characters, all this output, right? So when you're willing to contain it because you have that common agenda, you know you're going to get there.
So when Harsh was talking about leadership,
yes,
role and health, this is what you are saying.
Yes.
You have to contain the circus.
Yeah. And you're there to contain it, right? So you've created that. I mean, you're already doing it, by the way. I'm again, you know.
We are here. We are here. The organization is running.
Here. You're still doing it, you know. A willingness to stand up and say that, no, we're not totally messed up. We're actually doing a lot. We have done a lot. And therefore, you kind of highlight what you've got. You recognize it. You acknowledge it. And you get people down the line. Because it's very easy, I think, to come into work and say, this isn't happening, that isn't happening, my life is terrible, blah, blah, blah. Or to say that, well, am I not doing the best? Of course I'm doing the best, you know, and all those variations of that conversation. But that's different to an acknowledgement of people, of what others have done for you. Yep. And what's happening, you know, is a start point for creating that agenda and to highlight it and say no, and get it messaged all across. And when somebody's cribbing about it, say, no, hang on. I get all of that traffic was terrible and the minister was coming and then the roads were blocked and then you didn't get here 5 minutes, you got here 10 minutes later, right? I get it.
Almost your story.
Yeah. So yeah.
Good enough, Anand. Anand, at the beginning, I wanted to let the team know and the folks in the audience know that about yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you told me about yourself when we met the last time I came here was that you run ultra marathons. Do you still do it?
Okay. For anybody who knows about ultra marathons, I have only just crossed the 42 mark and I can do 50K.
Wow.
But just 42?
So, so any ultra marathoners in the audience would think, he's just got started. So 50 is the start point of ultra. So 50, 100, 120, they go on like that. So, yeah.
So you still continue doing that?
I'm actually now training for the Ironman. So my next madness is the Ironman.
Is it done in India? I didn't realize that.
Not in India. So we do have to travel abroad. You have the half Ironman that happens in India. It's in Goa. So that's something that I've done once. But Ironman scares me because it's huge. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of effort.
So how did you get into that work? Because if you look at the soft skills, communication versus the running with the athleticism, right? Marathon runner, the personalities don't.
Okay, like that. I think so in our family, we have a lot of heart disease.
Oh. And
cholesterol and all that. So that's one of the reasons. And, you know, it's like, how do you build context? It just started like that, you know, I don't want to be decrepit old and find that, you know, I've got heart disease and cholesterol and I need to go for an operation or, you know, something like that. And literally our entire a lot of family members, relatives has had that and passed on with it.
Got it.
So I didn't want that. That was one. And then I had heard about a friend who his mother told me that, you know, he's just gone off out for a while. He'll be back in 2 hours. So I was like, where's he going? He said, oh, he's running. So I was completely fascinated by this thing that somebody did. And I find I'm a little obsessive. So yes, so running helps my obsessiveness.
Any questions from the audience, Alex? Because I saw some things coming here.
in the chat.
Oh, I can bring it up. Let me see. We have one hand raised by Mohammed. You want to go ahead with your question?
Yes, hi. I appreciate that. My question is, I actually wanted to understand, when you were discussing about, giving an inputs over the trust. So for the trust perspective, for example, we don't know each other, but now
Yeah.
I have understood, what is your, the skills and expertise, and even I do have a trust with you now. But for anonymous, for an anonymous person in the office or anywhere in the group, to build a trust, what are the vital areas do we have to build by self over trusting and communicating a new person?
Right. It rarely starts blank, right?
Okay.
If to review it, trust rarely starts from a blank slate, meaning you already know something about the person. You already have an agenda when you're about to start a conversation. There is also a lot going on in your own mind before you begin. And if you review that, you'll see that even though you say you don't know that person, you're wondering, I wonder where he's from. What does he do? Who is he? Why is this meeting happening? What's going on? What do I do? What does he want from me? Is there something that I should do? Is there something? So can you hear the conversation? There would be a conversation that's happening as opposed to it being blank, right? So there is a loading of this situation as we enter a conversation, right? And yes, we ask questions, being willing to just communicate at that point
That is true.
with the other person and ask whatever you need to build trust. And being willing to say that maybe the other person may not be forthcoming.
Absolutely.
I leave it open. They're not necessarily forthcoming. It could be something in yourself that is making him feel like, I don't know, I don't want to talk to this guy. Or it might be something that they're coming from.
Yeah, that is indeed true.
You're okay with looking at it and saying, right, I've come with an agenda, and you're clear in your communication, and hence some amount of trust gets built.
Yeah.
Every iteration it may strengthen, right? With every iteration of communication, that trust will get strengthened.
That is true. Yeah, that's true. Of course. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks for your question, Mohammed. I know we are almost towards the end. Tanushree, looks like you also have a question.
Yeah. Hi, Anand. Thanks a lot for the session. It is really amazing. So yeah, as we discussed all the parameters. So I have one thing, like as I am from the recruitment team, maximum time we are having the conversation on call throughout overseas. The problem happens, the words sometimes will have a very good page, very good words, but while talking to the people, it will be comes we lose the sing a song thing, the rhythm we lose, like we speak very mechanically, like something, okay, we need this work, we have this business stuff, we need to get it done. So how to balance between the words and the rhythm? I mean, how to
You're saying that everything is transactional, right? If you're over the phone, remote, it's very transactional.
So Tanushree, you're saying that you're transactional or the other person is transactional?
it's like me, like I lose the sing a song voice there, like sometimes we go very mechanically. The other person is like very robotic. The other person will only hear the topic, not the voice, like as we are not in person meeting.
Sure. Okay. On the spot. So do you mind if I put you on the spot?
Go ahead. She'll be fine.
Yes.
You can
Yes.
say no. No, honestly, I say that you can turn around and say no. That's the level of freedom you have, right? To say no. It's okay. Oh, not now. Later, right? So what happens is that it's with the what is the intention on the call? When you call the person, you have an intention for that person. You would have
Yes.
read their resume and CV, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say the guy's name is Nitin Sharma. You've read who he is and what he is and all that. Are you thinking about what it is that you want from him and what you'd like to contribute to him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, apart from the generic discussion, like while talking to a person in general, I'm saying in terms of the candidates or other person who are we are dealing on call specifically, like sometimes we lose that, like we will speak to them very mechanically,
Hmm.
like
So you would, so if you're saying that you become mechanical, right? I would
yes,
just ask you to do a little bit of introspection and look at it and say, why did I just become mechanical? So what makes you happy? In which situation
okay,
are you feeling joyful? If I were to ask you,
okay,
are you married? Do you have children? Do you like family? Who within the
okay,
family makes you happy? You don't have to tell me. You just have to think it.
okay, got it, all
कौन
right.
खुश करता है तुमको राइट आता है ना अंदर से सॉरी आई जस्ट ब्रोक इनटू
Hindi.
yeah so
Yeah,
who makes you feel that way right got it now you're in what frame of mind I just ask
okay,
you a question right अब कहाँ है you've now suddenly gone to that thought you
okay,
get it all right so
yes,
you're on a call the precursor to prep for a call is one of acknowledgement of the self what I do what makes me comfortable what makes me happy what are my skill sets and what am I going to contribute now and this is a
okay,
practice right
yes,
so work pressure will push you out of this zone you need to bring yourself back into the zone by just looking at yourself and it's not a big deal right it's like what makes me happy I have a picture of my child in my mind all right good okay what am I here for it's a 2 minute it's a 2 minute thing I'm here to focus on the job right and I'm going to contribute and I'm going to make this conversation with this candidate inspiring for him and for me. I mean, inspiring is a big word, right? No, it's going to be a
yes,
fruitful conversation. That's it. And it's a tone in your voice at that moment that will just make it happen, right? But if
okay,
you're now bogged down by the 20 things, कि घर में खाना बनाना है, ये करना, all the 20 things, bosses and all this baggage on your head, you will say, I need to get these 20 calls out today, or how many ever calls.
Whatever the numbers are.
Yeah, whatever the number is, right? Now my
yes,
focus is only on the numbers, not on this candidate. Even though we spend, what's it, 3 minutes, 4 minutes per
Yep.
candidate, it's
yes,
possible to, and I'm not talking about great things. I'm just saying, hi, if it's Nitin, hi Nitin, how are you doing today? Feeling like saying that? Not feeling like saying that.
The frame of mind is very important.
Frame of mind.
Frame of mind is very
And it's
important.
possible to practice it and
Got
be
it.
honest and genuine about it. It's not that it's not possible. So, and you could be anywhere on that scale of totally genuine to totally ingenuine.
Good. I think
thank
end
you.
of the time, but we have one more question. Neeraj,
2 questions from here.
Tanushree is done. So we have only, Neeraj is second online. You have a question, Neeraj?
Hey, thank you so much, Anand, for being here. Very interesting, stirring up everybody's mind. I've been a believer that you've got to learn to connect with people before you communicate. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I got to know Neeraj in November.
Yes.
My first thing was, Neeraj, you and I need to meet face to face. I'm not going to do this online. I need to talk, right? And you asked me lots of questions. You checked out my Instagram page. You checked out everything. And I was like, who is this guy? He's looking at my Instagram page. He's talking to me, But then we got talking. And I think it was in the third or fourth meeting. Neeraj has been to a training program that I've been to, right? So a common ground. And so certain things immediately match. I have an intentionality towards Genzeon, and he has a context for Genzeon himself.
Yep.
So there was a match. So I use that as the example to say that, yeah, absolutely. I always need a face to face. It's a tough thing to just do everything online. Now, if forced into a situation where it's necessary only online because it's logistically not possible,
Yep.
then sure, it's not like I can't see facial expressions and interact. And also, you can hear it in the tone of voice, and you can always ask a person how they're feeling today, right?
Yep.
And what's troubling them, because I can hear it. It's not that it doesn't happen. So yeah, human connect, very important. Without, And that once that connect is established, then you can build, and then it strengthens the base.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. We're under the time. Anything else, Alex, that we need before we conclude?
No, I mean, I think talking about how Neeraj was on Anand's Instagram, I did share LinkedIn and Instagram for Anand here. So if you do want to find out more information, either about his life coaching or about running marathons, that is on there. But no, I think this has been great, and I appreciate the conversation as well here today.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anand. We really appreciate you coming over here all the way, spending time with us.
Yeah.
This will be extremely helpful, and hopefully the team here locally in Hyderabad will see you a little bit more often.
Sure. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, Vikram.
Thank you,
Thank you, team.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.